Hello and welcome everyone to this video in which I'm going to be solving a set from slot 2 of CAT 2024 paper. This set was part of the DLR section and this is a set in which a map was given of a gated community and there were different roads. Each of the lines are representing a particular road. Each of the points are some things with which are present and the lengths of the roads had been given to us. So we have been told that there's a schematic diagram of walkways indicated by straight lines, three of them each in shape of rectangles and so all of these are rectangles, so which means opposite sides are equal, and the lengths of a few of these roads have been given. We have been told that C is the only entry or exit point, which means inside this gated community, if you want to get into, then you can only get into through C and leave through C. And we have got residences which are present along A to H. So this line has got several houses, and you have got another set of residences which are present along this line M to L. And at points M and L and at points A and H, we have got houses which are present. Plus, we have been told that there's a post office at P and a bank which is located at B. To start solving such a set, the first thing that I recommend every student should do is that they should, in their rough sheet, redraw the schematic diagram. The biggest mistake that people make is that they try to do all the calculations or solving the set by looking at the diagram on the screen, and that creates a lot of confusion. You'll end up making a lot of mistakes. It's always better to draw the schematic diagram on your rough work. In fact, I recommend that for every question, draw the schematic diagram again and again. So let's say that this set, for example, has got 4 questions. For each of those questions, draw the diagram separately once again. And not only draw the diagram separately, but also write down every single path length, which you can calculate using these pieces of data. And then start solving the set. That way, you will not make mistakes, not make silly mistakes as far as the set is concerned. Now, the set is that's why going to be a bit long. And also, it has got another layer of difficulty, which I will explain once we look at the solutions of the 4 questions of this set. So starting off, first, I'm going to redraw this entire map like this, where I've written down the lengths of each of these roads along the straight lines. And B is the bank, and the triangle P is the post office. So I've marked everything, and C is the entry point as well as the exit point. So I've marked that as well. Okay, now let's look at the first question. Question number 1 says that one resident whose house is located at L needs to visit the post office as well as the bank. What is the minimum distance in meters he has to walk starting from his residence and returning to his residence? So starting from L, he has to go to both the post office and the bank. He can go to bank first and then post office later, but he has to travel the minimum possible distance. See, what we need to understand before we start calculating the shortest length possible from L to post office to bank to L, or L to bank to post office and back to L, is that there are some diagonal lines here. So when we have a diagonal line, then this is going to be one side of a right angle triangle. Like for example, OK is one side of the right angle triangle ONK. And we know that sum of two sides of a triangle will be greater than the third side. So if at all we have to travel in a direction along the diagonal, then it is important that we take the diagonal path in order to travel the shortest length. Like for example, let's say if I'm going from L to P, then that means that I'm going to be traveling along this diagonal direction, which means I should definitely take the diagonal path from K to O, because if not, then I'm traveling Kn and then NO, which will be longer than KO, because sum of two sides of a triangle will be greater than the third side. So diagonal paths are important to understand for this reason, that they are a shorter way of getting from one vertex of a triangle to the opposite vertex of that same triangle instead of traversing along the remaining two sides. So the way that I would go about solving this question is, because I can see that KO is along this diagonal and IG is also along this diagonal. So I'll first travel from L to P, taking KO definitely as one of the roads that I'm traveling. And while I'm traveling from the post office to the bank, from P to B, I'm traveling along this diagonal mostly. So to complete this particular journey, I will definitely take the diagonal path IG. So if I do that, and if I write down the sequence of my path from L to P and then from P to B and then from B to L, then this is going to be the shortest path, right? It's going to be L, K, O, P, I, G, B. And then after that, you can just do C, D, E, L, and that's it. You're done. So if we write down that path and then we add all of the lengths here, I get 300 plus 500, 800 plus 150, 950 plus 400, 1350 plus 250, which is 1600 plus 400, which is 2000, and then 2300, 2600, 3000, 3200. So 3200 is going to be the correct answer for this question. This was a funny question when I was giving the CAT paper last year, because if you see, there are two options which were the same. This is a mistake made by the cat paper. And I would not recommend. So people are saying that if two options are the same, then definitely those cannot be the correct answer. I will not make that mistake because in the past, cat has made a mistake in their options and have acknowledged that if you have marked any one of these as the answer, then your answer is correct. So if you had gotten the answer as 3000, you should have marked either C or D. Don't presume that because C and D they have given as the same value by mistake that C and D cannot be the correct answer. In this case, it did not end up being the right answer. That's why A was a short correct answer. But let's say if you had calculated the length of this path and it had come down to 3000, make sure that you're marking C or D. It is absolutely possible that 3000 could have been the correct answer and cat just made a mistake in giving the options. Right, so that's the answer for the first question of this set. Second question of this set says that one person enters a gated area and decides to walk as much as possible before leaving the area without walking along any path more than once, and always walking next to one of the lakes. Note that he may cross a point multiple times. So he can cross a point several times, but then he cannot travel the same path again, and he has to be adjacent to the lakes. The blue regions are the lakes, and he's entering through C and he has to exit through C. Only C he can touch, or sorry, C he can touch twice. Even the remaining parts he can touch twice, and we have to calculate the maximum distance. Okay, or how much distance will he walk along the gated area? And he is trying to walk as much as possible. So I have to calculate maximum distance that he can travel. If he has to come into C, exit through C, walk along the lakes. So then the path is very simple to understand, right? I have to travel from C to D, D to E, then E to F, F to K, K to L, L to M to N, N to K, K to J, G to J, J to G, G to F, and F to C. That way, he would have covered every single edge that is along the lakes, and that then would be the longest path that he can travel along the lakes by not traveling any straight line more than once. So it's a simple question, this one. And that if you add up these parts, then it's a simple addition question. Answer will be 3800. Okay. Next, we have this question number 3, which says one resident takes a walk within the gated area, starting from A and returning to A without going through any point other than A more than once. So he starts from A, this is where he lives, and then he travels as much as possible because they are asking us to calculate what is the maximum distance. But he can touch each point only once. Apart from A, of course, which is going to be the starting and the ending point. Now, this question, the logic to solve this question is that I need to try to find a path, which if he takes, then he will touch every point once. Can I form a path from A back to A in this particular community, in this particular schematic diagram, where he is touching every single point once? If I can make that path, then that will be the longest path that he can travel from A to get back to A without touching the path more than once. And that path is this. He will go A, B, G, F, C, D, E, L, M, N, K, J, O, P, I, H, A. Now, the only two paths that he's not traveling along are O, K, and G, I. Why? Because go back to the first question. Diagonal paths will be a shorter way of going from K to O or from going from I to G, and here we're trying to maximize the distance. So if we're trying to maximize the distance, we should not take the diagonals at all. If we keep that in mind, and if we try to touch every single point once using the path from A back to A, then we will get the answer as 5100. So this question might require a bit of trial and error, and you might not be very sure as to whether 5100 is the longest path or is there a longer way of going from A back to A. And that is what makes this set difficult. So remember, I told you at the very beginning that it's a long set, and what makes a set difficult is questions like this, where options have also not been given to us. So it's a theta question, and in the theta question, if they're asking us maximum possible distance, then I will always be in a sense of doubt that whether I've calculated the maximum distance or not. And although, we might have calculated the longest distance, but you'll always be tempted to try and see if there's any other path that I can take from A to A, which is longer than this. And that confusion can actually make this set a bit difficult to solve. And that the same level of difficulty is present in question 4 of this set as well. It says that visitors coming for morning walks are allowed to enter as long as they do not pass by any of the residences and do not cross any point more than once. What is the maximum distance that such visitors can walk within the gated area? So they cannot go from A to H. Like these two vertices, they should not touch at all. L to M also, they should not touch at all. And every single vertex, again, they can touch maximum. once. So they cannot touch a point more than once. Again, this will require a bit of trial and error. And after trial and error, I'm telling you that the longest path that can be taken is C, D, E, F, K, because you cannot travel to L. Then you will go to N, then you will go to O, then you will go to P, I, G. You will have to go IG because you cannot go IH because H is part of the residential area, and then BC. So again, we should try to avoid the diagonal paths, but here I will have to take the diagonal paths basically because I cannot touch H. And that is then going to be the shortest or the longest path that someone can take from C back to C by touching every single point only once and not going to the area at all where residences are present. So this also requires so much amount of trial and error. I still remember that when I was doing this in the examination, by the second part that I had calculated, I had gotten the values as 3,500. But I was trying to see if there's any other part that I can travel because I had to travel through to IJG. So I was thinking that whether I should take the diagonal or not take the diagonal. And I calculated several different paths to see if there's a longer path than 3,500. And that ended up wasting even more of my time. And even at the end of the solution, I was not very sure whether I solved the set correctly or not. I ended up getting such an answer correct. But this is a problem with questions like the schematic diagram. Set is pretty simple. It's a bit time taking. You will have to redraw the schematic diagram to be very sure and not make silly mistakes. And you will have to do some trial and error. Apart from that, the question is simple addition based question. Right. So that's all for this set. Stay tuned for solutions of the remaining sets of this plot as well. Thank you.